Hello everyone, Trophy Wine Hunter. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm pleased to bring you my 5K subscriber video on the 1998 Chateau Petrus. Before I start, I'd like to again thank all my viewers and subscribers for tuning in for all these 3.5 years to get me to this level. I really appreciate all the love and support and the encouraging words. I did do a live stream where I did in part give my initial views of the Chateau Petrus wine. You can watch the end part of that video, and just talked randomly about, reminisced about previous videos that I did, and also answered some of the questions from my viewers and subscribers. So please tune into that also. So let's talk about Chateau Petrus. So again, it's unusual, I think, because you actually pronounce the S. It's not Chateau Petrus, it's Petrus. The name Chateau Petrus comes from St. Peter, Petrus in Greek, and it means rock. And part of it is during, as we'll talk about the soil, which is very unique in Chateau Petrus, during the warmer months, the soil at Chateau Petrus dries out so that it becomes hard as a rock. And so maybe that's why it's kind of called that. Petrus is in the Pomerol region in Bordeaux, and it is near the eastern border near Saint-Émilion. It's a really small estate. It's about 11.4 hectares. The original part of that, when it first became an estate, was only about 7 hectares, and they added to that a little bit later. And it is owned by the Jean-François Moueix and his family. So let's go back to the origins of Petrus. So originally there was a 7-hectare vineyard in 1770 that was owned by the Arnaud family. So initially it was, some bottles were actually labeled Petrus-Arnaud. And going back, it was always a great winery, and it's interesting to note that in the first kind of books about wine, it was actually ranked lower than VCC, the Vieux Château Certan, and alongside Trotanoy. But it became pretty popular very quickly as a very good wine. And in the 1878 Paris Exposition, it was awarded a gold medal, which was a first for a Pomerol wine. And it was given kind of the ranking equivalent to a second growth in the Merlot region. And as you recall, you'll say, well, why wasn't it rated in the 1855 classification system? It was because at that time, the rating system was only seen from the left bank. The left bank was seen as the dominant region for Bordeaux, and really at that point, right bank wasn't that developed or known. This part of the history is a little bit hazy, but for some reason in 1917, the Arnaud family had to sell their shares, and it was sold to a former manager of Petrus called Mr. Sabin-Douarre. And we're not sure why, but then he created a Société, Civile, the Chateau Petrus. So we're not really sure what happened there, why that happened. But this gentleman, Sabin-Douarre, loved to dine, and he always went to the best restaurant in the right bank, which was in the Hotel Loubat. And the owner of that hotel, Madame Loubat, loved, you know, I guess these wines because this guy was coming in and they were friends. So she started to buy up shares of Petrus, and somewhere between 1929 and 1945, she bought up all the shares of Petrus. And so she became the owner of Chateau Petrus. Then she somehow got in contact with Jean-Pierre Moueix, who was the father of Jean-François Moueix, and also Christian Moueix, who was very famous as a winemaker in Bordeaux. So Jean-Pierre Moueix somehow befriended Madame Loubat and became the exclusive agent for the Petrus label. There was a very significant winter frost in 1956 that basically killed 2/3 of the vineyard in Petrus. But Madame Loubat made a very important decision. Instead of getting rid of all these vines and replanting them, she decided to cut back the surviving rootstocks in a process called resapage. And it wasn't previously tried, but I guess it's kind of just cutting it back and letting it grow back. But somehow that worked, and she then now has like older vines, which most of Bordeaux in the Pomerol region does not have. So Madame Loubat died in 1961, and the estate was divided among her, I think, niece and nephew, but there was a little bit given to Jean-Pierre Moueix to kind of keep the peace or to settle any disagreements. And in 1964, Jean-Pierre Moueix bought all the shares of Chateau Petrus. And that was significant. The other significant thing, he brought in an enologist called Jean-Claude Barrois, and the Barrois family is still attached with the Petrus winery. And this was significant because prior to that, Émile Pounard was the winemaker and enologist hired by Chateau Petrus. But if you recall history about Émile Pounard, he was a very famous wine enologist who did a lot of studies of grapes and did a lot for Bordeaux. Having said that, it can be argued he actually set back the right bank by many, many years because his research was on Cabernet Sauvignon grapes. And so what his techniques, they actually worked for Cabernet Sauvignon grapes and did not work really well for Merlot grapes. And so that was a significant change in terms of the cycle of Chateau Petrus. And it can be argued that prior to 1964, probably Chateau Petrus was not getting the most out of its vines because, again, the enologist was using Cabernet Sauvignon based techniques on Merlot grapes, and that changed with Jean-Claude Barrois. Another significant thing happened in 1969 when another 5 hectares was added to the vineyard. It was purchased from Chateau Gazan. And so that was the last purchase of Chateau Petrus, and that is what now makes up Chateau Petrus. So I guess you can also formulate from that Chateau Gazan probably has pretty good vineyards also, and is probably a very good wine also. In 2003, Jean-Pierre Moueix passed away, and then he passed on his interest to Jean-François Moueix. And he is actually the head of Groupe Duclos. And if you know Groupe Duclos is this organization that every year puts out this collection of 9 wines. It used to include Latour, but mostly the first growth wines plus Petrus, Decam, and I think sometimes it also includes Cheval Blanc. But that's called the Duclos collection, and it's put out every year. It's like a 9 bottles a set. And so that's the organization. He runs that. And he also is the owner of Chateau Petrus. And that's probably why they can do this, because they have the consent and the cooperation of Chateau Petrus. The oenologist Jean-Claude Barrois retired after 45 vintages in 2018, but he was replaced by his son Olivier, who manages the vineyard and the winemaking. So really you can say that since 1960s, mid-1960s, the winemaking team or the knowledge of the winemaking team hasn't changed. So stylistically, they have so much knowledge of this grape. And really the ownership hasn't changed that much either. So, when we go back to look at great wineries, one thing you notice is there's not a lot of change in ownership. There's not a lot of change in winemaking styles. And I think that really speaks to the consistency of the wine. And they've got it down pat, basically. And the other thing is they have the greatest soils in Pomerol. We'll explain that a little bit later. To bring you up to recent history, in 2018, it was announced that 20% of the interest in Chateau Petrus had been sold to a Colombian billionaire called Alexandro Santo Domingo. And in fact, the deal had been consummated in 2016, and they kept it secret for two years. I'm not sure why, but that's life. So let's talk about what's so special about Petrus in terms of the technical, and then we'll talk about drinking. So Petrus is located on the top of a 20-hectare mound, which is called the Petrus boutonniere or buttonhole. And actually that mound is actually called Petrus. It's actually named Petrus. That's kind of where the winery name comes from. So what's special about this? It's really clay heavy, blue clay heavy, and it possesses a topsoil and a subsoil that's really high in iron, and that differs from all the other neighboring vineyards in Pomerol, which is normally a mixture of gravel and sand or clay and sand. Petrus produces about 30,000 bottles, or about 3,000, or less than 3,000 cases a year. The grapes are hand harvested for 2 to 3 days, and the wine is then aged 12 to 16 months in oak barrels, 50% new. 100% Merlot since 2010. The previous vintages had a little bit of Cabernet Franc, which they no longer have. I think they had about 5% of the vineyard as Cabernet Franc, but that's been all taken out. So going forward, it's all been 100% Merlot. So Chateau Petrus's clay soils are at least 40 million years old. By contrast, the gravel around the plateau, surrounding the plateau with other wineries, is only 1 million years old. So I guess it's much more complex soil. And so what's unique is that this Chateau Petrus is all blue clay. There are some other wineries around them that have some, but no other vineyard in the world is all blue clay. And so what's so important about this blue clay is, one, it's the iron content. The second is it's really, really dense. It's really dark and it's really hard. So supposedly the roots cannot penetrate it. So the roots have to grow sideways and they really have to fight. So this idea, if you believe in this idea that roots have to struggle to get nutrients, and this makes more complex wines, well, these vines struggle more than anything else because they can't even get through this clay. It's basically like hard rock. So it's a very unique situation. With this type of clay, when it absorbs water, it becomes almost impermeable. And those water molecules are able to penetrate the interlayer molecules between the clay. And so when the dry summer months arrive, because the clay is so packed and can hold water, the vines are still able to feed with the much needed moisture. So in essence, what that means is that whether it be drought conditions, or I guess really rainy might not help it so much, but in particularly drought years when it's really, really hot, it still will survive. So that tells me, in fact, a year like 2022 with a really, really hot year, that would be actually a good year for Petrus. The blue clay of Petrus creates grapes with a real high level of tannin, but that are also soft. And that is a very unique kind of characteristic. I think that explains from a technical level. From a drinking level, what I've always found is Petrus is, again, intense but not heavy. And that's a very difficult thing to explain. I can only tell you from experience. Again, as I said in the original video that I did on this wine in my live stream, I always detect a glycerin smell and taste to it. And glycerin to me is sweet, but then with a little bitterness on the aftertaste. In addition, I can tell you that this is one of the most aromatic wines that I have opened over my 3 years at this channel. When I first opened it, it was aromatic out of the bottle. When I was just starting this video and just pouring this in the glass, it's aromatic. That's how aromatic that this wine is. And I know that aroma is usually associated with Chateau Margaux, or DRC, I can't think of another wine that I've drank over the 500 videos that I've done on this channel that is more aromatic in that sense. Like honestly, I can smell it from here right now. So that's how concentrated. It's very unique because it's intense, but it's not strong. So this idea that you have to have strong tannins and really heavy flavors to be intense is different. Like I can smell it honestly from here. I can smell the wine just swirling it from here. I can smell it. And so that speaks to this idea of delicate subtlety, delicateness, and I smell kind of very fragrant floral aromas without being heavy. So it's intense but not heavy. Let's look at the wine. So this is the cork, and you can see it's perfect. Very little oxidation cracks on it, so really well managed. Let's look at the bottle. Chateau Petrus, 1998. Back of the bottle's got nothing. And then here's the wine. Again, the color is still for a 26-year-old wine. Very nice. I still think it's just at its peak right now. It could probably go another 20 years. There is a little bit of edge, brownness on the edge, but not very much. It's still very excellent in color. So I've had this wine open now. I did my live stream. I had it for lunch, did my live stream yesterday around dinner time, put it back in the fridge, took it out again tonight, had it with dinner again, and now I'm doing my video. So it's now been open for about a day and a bit. And I can tell you it's just tasting just as good as it was in the beginning. The initial taste, I can only tell you, and again, you can say, well, Trophy, you're being biased, you didn't blind taste this. I'm not gonna blind taste the Chateau Petrus. But I can tell you honestly, in my experience, and I've done 500 plus videos on this channel, I don't think I've ever experienced two things. One, when I opened the wine, I don't think I've ever experienced as much fragrance. Not the 1966 La Violette, not the 97 DRC, Romani Savant, not the 2015 Echageau, not the 2006 Lapin. None of these wines compared in terms of that aroma. I can also tell you in the 500 plus videos that I've done on this channel, I've never had the problem of having to ration my wines for this video. So I can tell you that I almost felt like I wanted to drink the whole bottle last night, but I said, no, Trophy, you gotta save it for today. I saved about half a bottle. I was drinking it at dinner. Again, I had to say to myself, no, don't drink it all. You still have to do a video. I've never had this type of experience with any of the other wines that I've had on this channel. And you know that I've had a lot of great wines on this channel. So again, let's go back to the initial tasting notes that I had. Very fragrant. I had the oak, dark berries, dark plums, floral components, glycerin. On the taste, black plums, blueberries, blackberries, then some cocoa, and then I said on the aftertaste a little bit of charred graphite taste, aftertaste. So now let's smell it and taste it. So on the smell, it's a little bit more intense now. So as before, it was a little bit more fresher and acidic. You still have that, and I get hints of pomelo actually. Now when I first smelled it on the live stream, I said it was almost a kumquat peel. I think it's pomelo now, but you get that. You still get that floral component, but you get more intensity of now a mesquite, kind of a smokiness, and then you get a little bit of graphite on the nose, and then the dark berries that are really strong, and a toasty oak component. So the dark berries and the mesquite smokiness is much more intense now and much fuller. So you see that quite a bit. Yeah, so it's a much more fuller, heavier wine in terms of the aroma profile at this point. Beautiful still, very balanced, delicious in terms of it's very, very pleasing in terms of the aroma. I'm just letting the aftertaste come to me. So you get dark berries, you get a little bit of oak up front. The texture is what really does it for me. There's a very silky, chocolatey texture. Now there's a long aftertaste of maybe like tobacco and a little bit of woodiness to it. I'm still tasting, and almost a little smokiness at this point. But it's so easy to drink. It's a very difficult wine to keep yourself in control. And I have had this experience. I've had this, I think, my third or fourth bottle of this Petrus, this vintage. I've had other bottles of Petrus, and this is very common when I drink Petrus. It's a wine that you want to drink up very quickly. It's almost, it's very alluring. Somehow it draws you in and you just want to drink it. It's got almost like a magic spell to it. It's so comforting. It's so smooth. It's so pleasing, and it draws you in like a magnet. It's very hard to explain, but that's the sense I get with many Petrus that I drink. It's a wine that just draws you in and makes you want to drink more of it. It's got a magic spell on you. It's very difficult to describe. I don't know how to describe that, but this is not a feeling you get with a lot of wines. There are a couple of wines in the world that have that, but not as strong an allure as the Petrus for me personally. Yeah. So it's got sweetness of fruit. It's got a little bit of edginess, but not herbaceous. It's just that little bit of mesquite, almost glycerol aftertaste that makes it interesting. It's kind of a little bit funky, or edgy, but not to a point where it's bothersome. It's just very exciting. It's an enticing, alluring, exciting wine. And again, I'm having trouble, as you can see, not drinking it all because I'm trying to leave some of it for the pictures, and I'm going to actually take, but it's really, really difficult not to drink up this wine, all of it. So my score of this wine, because of all the uniqueness of this wine and all the unique experiences that I've had with this wine over the last 2 days, I can tell, I'm pretty certain in my mind now that this is probably the best wine that I've drank, that I've reviewed on this channel. So viewers can go back, I think I've reviewed 500 wines, or if I've made 500 videos, some of them multiple wines. So I've probably reviewed on this channel alone, probably 800, 900 wines. And I really cannot think of another wine that I would prefer drinking to this wine. 1998 is a monster vintage for Chateau Petrus, probably one of the best vintages I would say, between the 89, the 90, and the 98. These are probably top 3 vintages in the period between 1980 and 2000. Some of the 2000 and forward wines are just not in their drinking window yet, so it's hard to compare, but this is probably one of the best examples right now of Chateau Petrus that's drinking exceptionally. So for that reason, I'm going to give it 100 points. It is exceptional. I don't even know what to say. There are very few wines that I have tasted that can make me feel this way, and there are very few wines that you know, you can go crazy about. And really, this is not a unique experience that I have with Chateau Petrus. There are a fair bit of Chateau Petrus vintages where it really is almost euphoric. It's in nature. It almost feels like you can do anything. It's a really weird feeling, but you feel almost high, and you almost feel like you could do anything. It really is and it could be just because the pleasure sensors are going off and just saying, this is such a nice wine. I'm sorry I'm going on and on about this, but I'm trying to show you through words and through my expression how good this wine is. It's really, really good. I'm so happy actually I saved this for such a momentous occasion as a 5K subscriber wine. And I'm so glad the bottle was so good, and I'm so glad that the wine performed so well. So it's I'm so blessed. Thank you so much for following my channel. Thank you so much for viewing this video, and I hope that you continue to come with me on my journey through the wine world, and hopefully we can drink and share more great wines together in the future. Till next time, happy drinking and cheers.